I'm no good at taking good advice, and I'm self-careless, so don't tell me twice that lately I've been so stuck in my head that I forget just about everything my therapist said. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe I'm self-helpless. Maybe we are all self-helpless.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Self-Helpless Podcast. I'm Kelsey Cook.
I'm Delaney Fisher.
And oh my gosh, it's going to make me emotional.
I know, it's weird.
I didn't even think about how that was going to feel to do the intro for the last time.
Yeah.
You might be able to tell from the title of today's episode, but this episode is going to be my last episode of Self-Helpless.
Yes.
So, yeah. What a weird feeling.
A moment of silence,
I feel like I'm in
please.
a moment of silence.
I know. It is so weird.
I feel like I'm in a... Do you feel like you're in a dream? I feel like I'm in a dream.
It is very weird. But you know, it's so weird, but also like we're friends in real life. So it's not like I'm never going to see you or talk to you. So I think it's like...
Yeah.
I almost think it's weirder for our listeners than it is for me in a lot of ways because you stay in my life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
But yeah, I don't think it's going to hit me until I do several episodes, and you're not there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's when it hits me because if you've been tuning in at all to this show, you know, that shit really hits me like several months after the fact of impact. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm like a 3 months later type of person that it all dawns on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. Or I'm just in shock, or you know what I mean? Maybe I'm just in
I know.
shock and denial.
I know.
It's
so strange. I will say, and I know Taylor talked about this when she left the show, is that we are all so grateful that we are all three best friends still.
Yeah.
Like, as a unit, individually, what a huge accomplishment. I think I know that so often when people work together, something happens and they like can't make it through, and I just am so proud and happy that we're all best friends still.
Absolutely. Especially in the entertainment industry. My God, we deserve a fucking gold medal.
Unheard of.
Yes. Not only did we survive it, but we're all doing the type of stuff that we enjoy, which is something I'm very grateful for. You know, we've all taken like different roads to get to where we want to be or what we enjoy, and they're all very us type of results. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
It's the Sex and the City quiz. What character are you? It's the same vibe with Self-Helpless. I feel like all three of us are very different people who I think over time have become even more ourselves, like more us. This is coming out on Monday, January 22nd, which means for our LA area helpsters, tomorrow night, Tuesday, January 23rd, I'm going to be headlining the main room of the Comedy Store in Hollywood. Yay! It's very exciting. Yeah, big bucket list thing for me. I can't wait. And it would fill my fucking heart up with joy if there were helpsters in the crowd, because it's kind of a nerve-wracking sort of show to do, and I would love to have helpsters there. So if you're in the LA area, please come out. And then in February, I'm in Tacoma, Philly, Jersey, Stamford. I mean, you've heard me list these before, but I just have so many tour dates coming up, guys. So you can go to kelseycook.com and get some tour date tickets. Yay! And how about you, Del?
Very exciting. You can join my email list. It's free. You get some private podcast episodes about just mindfulness and creativity in work and in life. And there's some really cool interviews over there with people who are really doing just the craziest, coolest, weirdest shit. I like sharing about different career opportunities I find out about, media opportunities I find out about, just kind of first stop for anything that I hear about, I blast to my list. And so, yeah, a lot of people, you know, you might get featured in a magazine, you might get a cool gig. We might end up working together on something. I just really enjoy the community over there. So feel free to come on over. It's DelaneyFisher.com. It's all free, and would love to have you.
Incredible. Go join, guys.
Right.
So you're asking about a favorite quote.
Yes. It could be the favorite. I know. It could be your favorite quote of all time. No big deal. Or it could be like your favorite quote that you've either heard or mentioned on the podcast. I mean, it's up to you, really. This is your episode, baby. Whatever strikes your fancy.
Oh, man. I think one that feels fitting for today is "Leap and the net will appear," which, you know, it's an old school, corny one. But I think the changes that I'm trying to make in my life right now are scary for me because it is unknown.
Yeah.
And feels a little bit like I don't know exactly what is going to come of these changes and how it's going to go, but I know that the way my life has currently been hasn't felt like the right fit in certain ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like there are parts of my life where it's almost like putting an outfit on that you used to wear a lot a few years ago, but now you put it on and you're like, oh, there's nothing wrong with this outfit, but it just doesn't feel like current me anymore.
Right.
And so I have a few things in my life right now that I'm trying to make feel a little bit more in alignment with who I am now.
Yeah.
So,
makes sense.
So yeah, that's kind of the quote I'm thinking about. But yeah, the decision to step away from Self-Helpless was super hard. It's something I'd been thinking about for a long time and really making sure it was what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And you helpsters have heard me talk on the show quite a bit this year, I think, maybe particularly the past half a year, about really feeling burnt out, struggling with, you know, prolonged grief stuff with my mom, depression, and just I feel a little bit like I've been beating a dead horse, like kind of saying the same problems over and over, but I hadn't been taking a lot of action to change something.
Yeah.
And also struggling with Chad and I having so little time in person together. And I feel like the older you get when you're living with your partner, in a lot of cases, that person is like your rock. They're like kind of your number one person in your life. And it's been hard to be apart so much on tour. So something I was feeling was like, okay, I knew that Chad and I wanted to work together in some capacity where we knew that no matter how busy our week was, we'd get to sit home together for an hour in our office and record a podcast together.
Right.
And so, as you guys know, I've been talking about it on the podcast that we started a podcast together a few weeks back called Pretend Problems. And it's been great. I've really been loving it. And so, you know, started that podcast and then also had a pretty serious conversation with my manager and my agent about taking a step back a little bit in touring, not in a way that I don't think people who like look at my calendar may even notice. But for me, I finally set some like actual firm boundaries with myself of like, I cannot work three weekends or more in a row.
Right.
I cannot do XYZ. And what that does is it forces you to work less, which feels very backward to me.
Right.
If you've listened to the show for a long time, you guys know I'm just like, I've definitely bought into that hustle culture my whole life of like, you can't control anything, but you can control how hard you work. And I've been doing a lot for a long time. And I feel like I finally have some things in my life now that I would really like to enjoy and I haven't been able to.
Right.
You know, bought this beautiful house, but I don't get to be in it very much the way I've been touring. Have this amazing relationship, don't get to actually physically be in person for it very often. So I just have made some changes recently, and I'm really excited. I hope that today, like as sad as today feels to have this be the last episode, I kind of want it to hopefully be like a celebration funeral. You know how some people like
a living funeral.
A living funeral. How people choose to see, you know, somebody's passing as like a celebration of their life. I hope that in today's episode we can focus more on like, oh my gosh, this has been so incredible, and less of that this does feel sad in a lot of ways to move away from the show. But it's been, my God, we've been doing it for almost 7 years.
Yeah.
We started the podcast when I was 27 or 28.
Something like, I think I was 26. Oh, I always forget. I'm pretty sure
I
I
know.
was 26. Yeah.
Yeah, and I still really love self-help. I love the topics that we discuss on the show still, but I think you do run the risk sometimes of like when you make something a job instead of a hobby, that it can, you know, the show is a lot of work to run, and we are so proud of it and proud of what it's become. And Delaney's going to continue to, you know, kick ass with the show and have incredible guests on. But I think for me, it's just felt like this is the right time for me to step away, to change my life up a little bit. And, it's 7 years is a long time. We haven't missed a week in 7 years, and
that's wild to me. I mean, when you put it that way, that's really crazy.
Yeah,
and I think it totally makes sense. I mean, I hope that what you do next, especially your podcast with Chad and whatever kind of things that you guys do together, whether it's touring or whatever, or you stepping back from tour. Yeah, I just hope it enables both of you to be able to be home more, work less on the road, and just do things that feel a little bit more like they come with ease versus so much burnout and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, it'd be a really shitty self-help podcast if it was like, no, you're going to push through and you're going to be fucking exhausted constantly. You're never going to be home. You're never going to see your man. But I mean, you got to take care of yourself. And it's like, look, you can come back anytime. You can come back for an episode anytime you want, whether it's you, Taylor, all three of us. Like, it's an open invitation. So it's like,
thank you.
I mean, you know, yeah, I mean, it's going to be an adjustment. It's going to be weird. But like, 7 years, that's not nothing. I mean, that's a really good chunk of time that we've had together doing this.
Yes. Yeah. On the depression episode recently, I was talking about how it felt so backward that I have such an easy time telling people in my life, or, you know, even listeners of the show were always like, take care of yourself, do whatever you need to do. And it did seem like, wow, I'm going to be going against the advice I give to everybody else,
right? To
keep doing something that I don't feel like is something I'm like fully in anymore. And I also don't want to show up to the show and have you listeners be like, oh man, she just sounds super burnt out. She doesn't really sound like she's giving us her best. Because that's not, I don't want that. So, you know, there have been episodes where I have felt a little bit like I've just clocked in and shown up and done it, but didn't really feel like I could give. I didn't feel like I had much to give, honestly, because I was you know, in such a bad burnout or feeling depressed or having a hard mom day or whatever it is. And, you know, on Pretend Problems, it is more of a comedy podcast. It's, you know, we're pretty silly. We're joking about what's happened in our week, and we're talking also about stuff in our relationship, which I continue to really enjoy talking about. I like talking about relationships. I like talking about mine and Chad's relationship and like working through our problems and just growing. So again, if you Helpsters want to continue to hear me in some capacity that's like a podcast vibe, you know, well, not podcast, it's literally a podcast, but podcast vibe / it's also, we put the video on YouTube, and we've actually been shocked at how many people are like watching the YouTube video as opposed to just listening to it like a podcast.
Oh, funny. So yeah.
Anyway, I'm really enjoying that so far. You can come over there, Pretend Problems, and we give advice to listeners too. So if you want to write in and get some relationship advice, that email is pretendproblemspodcast@gmail.com. But yeah, let's reminisce a little bit, because it's been a while since I think we talked about the very, very beginning of the show.
Yeah.
But so you and I, and then you and Taylor and me and Taylor, like our triangle of friendship, we were all kind of starting at the same place with one another, where we didn't know each other very well.
Right. Yeah.
We knew each other a little bit and liked each other right away, and we knew that we were all type A.
Yes.
Like very type A people, very into self-help, and to be female comics and type A did not seem like a very common thing, especially in LA.
Or just type A in that industry, and caring about your health and wellness in any shape or form. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I had a manager at the time who I believe she had suggested like, oh, you guys should write a pilot together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we had started to work on that, and the podcast was actually kind of the afterthought. It was like the whatever thing that we were like, well, we should do this for fun.
Yes, exactly.
And what ended up happening was that the podcast really took off and the pilot didn't.
Oh, yeah. No, that's exactly what happened. We were kind of put together by this manager, and then we wrote this pilot together. Pilot, for people who are like, what the fuck does that even mean? It's the first episode of a TV show. And while we were waiting on what was happening with that being pitched around, by the way, something did happen with it, but I'm not sure if we're allowed to say. You know, it got stolen from us. But anyway, maybe we'll have to cut this out. Who knows? Got stolen, replaced by all men. Anyway, that was the last time I ever did anything industry standard. Never pitched anything again. But hence why everything I do is self-funded. Okay, anyway, we're moving on.
God, that was so... The things that Delaney and Taylor and I have been through business-wise.
Unreal.
And then more recently, things that Delaney and I have been through business-wise with this show. It's just like, it's just laughable. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
So many things were like, it's just out of your control, and you're like, what in the fuck, man?
Well, how cool is that thing happened? It was out of our control. The powers were much bigger than we could handle. And then what was birthed out of it was the fact that we all enjoyed working with each other. And we're like, what if we just start a podcast for fun? This was like, there was no attachment to the outcome of it. And literally like 2 days later, because we're type A, we had a podcast. It was like, okay, Kelsey's like, I got the equipment. We got it, you know. Oh, here's the name of it. We're all like throwing things out, organizing a fucking Google Doc. And then boom, like two days later, we are recording. And that's the thing.
Scheduling a photo shoot.
Exactly. We did all the things. And that ended up being the thing that, you know, took off for us as a team, and then stuck around. Like, that's the thing that kind of stuck. And it's so funny because I was talking to Taylor the other day, and what's so cool is that our very first episode, and a lot of episodes in the beginning, were recorded at my day job at the time, which was at a movie studio. And we would we'd book the conference room and record in there. We walk around the lot after, all that kind of stuff. And now Taylor's new show is going to be at that same studio.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
It's going to be filming there. And it's like, how funny. Talk about manifesting the shit out of your dreams, right? It's like,
yeah.
And literally on the tour that I ended up taking you guys on around that studio, like one of the sound stages, I believe, is going to be her sound stage. So she's actually been inside of her own sound stage like 7 years ago. How funny is that, right?
That's insane.
And so that was really weird. And so she snapped some, or she told me in a text or whatever, snapped a couple pictures and said, I just ate lunch like across from where we used to record the podcast. And I'm like, wow, isn't that just so crazy?
It's wild.
Just so crazy. And I remember walking around the lot with Taylor, I think specifically, being like, you ever think that you'll like host a late night show one day or something? I feel like you'd be really great at that. Like the whole vibe you got. And she's like, I don't know. I mean, just the weirdest things when you think of what we were up to.
Yeah.
That in that moment, and how everything unfolded is just the weirdest thing. So, I don't know. I think
it started so small.
Oh my gosh. We were sharing 2 microphones from out of the 3 of us. We were passing back and forth the microphone.
Fucking nightmare. I mean, I'm shocked anybody listened to that first episode, because on a technical end, that's just like, what were we doing?
I know. God, I mean, horrible. We didn't think anybody would listen. I mean, we did not think anybody would listen. This was really just like a fun thing for us to do. And we were getting to know each other. I think all of us were so grateful to have found friends in comedy who like got us and who were trying to balance like having a full life and not burning out, I mean, just so weird to look back on how everything happened.
I know. It's funny because I think most people who aren't performers, if they're in a group of 3 and they want to get to know each other better, maybe they'll play one of those like fun card games that's like, you flip a card and it asks you like, where's the craziest place you've ever had sex? And like you have it over fucking wine night with your new friends. And that was just not enough for us.
We did a 7-year project instead.
We did a 7-year public we just recorded our... what's funny? Because you're so obsessed with like,
oh gosh,
Married at First Sight and Love is Blind.
Yes.
We really married at first sight our friendship. We just like immediately broadcast it and recorded it, and it just so funny. But there was it's hard because I will say, if you're an OG Helpster, I know we'd gotten those comments a lot of times of like, oh man, those first episodes, those were so special. And I think sometimes people missed the dynamic of those first episodes, and the problem, not the problem, but just like the reality is that we couldn't keep manufacturing something like that, because that was the magic of a first date,
right?
But with friends.
Absolutely. Oh yeah.
We were in our sparkly honeymoon, learning brand new things about each other that we didn't even know.
Right.
So of course the first 10, 20 episodes were going to be a different vibe than 3 years in, where then we know more about each other. And I honestly, I've loved, I'm biased because it's been our show, but like I've loved every version of Self-Helpless. I think if you do think of our show as seasons, like having 6.5 seasons, as of now, it's like every one of them had different purpose, different meaning. We were different people each season. We were going through different things. We were in different relationships. We had different jobs. Yeah. And, it just, what a crazy thing we created.
I know.
I mean,
it is.
We just didn't know that anything was going to come of it.
No, it really became like this living, breathing thing, like all on its own, especially just with, you know, feedback from our subscribers and stuff like that. And just like you said, all of the transitions that we went through as people. It's really funny because I think we originally started thinking, let's just talk about like kind of light, funny self-help type of things, and we kind of review it and we try it, and then we report back of if we liked it or if it worked for us. It became something so different so quickly. I mean, so different. Just based on what people were like wanting us to talk about and different topics, you know, kind of like bringing light and approachability and I guess accessibility to tougher things than we had originally thought about. I mean, I don't think we really planned on talking about some of the heavier stuff that we really have throughout these 7 years. But that's what it evolved into. So it's really interesting how like when you do start something, just like being open to that, being open to the fact that where you start it might not be where it ends up, and it really just kind of takes on a life of its own. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and it's funny because to me that runs so parallel to our friendships anyway, because it's like our friendships started more like not surfacey, but just that's I think natural with any friendship, that the longer you know the person, then you're like, oh, I feel comfortable sharing this deeper thing with them. Yeah. So it's like as our friendships were deepening and we were getting more vulnerable with one another, we were again doing that into a microphone.
Right.
So then the podcast itself, we started opening up about, you know, deep things that we've gotten so many emails from people over the years, so many messages where you guys say that we've talked about something that has really positively changed your life.
Yeah.
And that's an episode helped you leave an abusive relationship, helped you leave a shitty job with a shitty boss, helped you in these ways that we never anticipated. And I think that to me is like the greatest joy of having done this show is that we called it Self-Helpless, but that we were actually able to help anybody is such a victory for me.
Oh my gosh. Amen to that. Exactly how I feel. I mean, there's truly if you've been listening for a while, I've had many a job, many a career, but when I really think of like the impact any part of my work has had, it's like nothing. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry.
Oh, it's okay. You can cry. It wouldn't be a self-help episode.
But really, like when you think about it, the emails that we have gotten that, you know, people didn't hurt themselves because of our show. I mean, what compares to that? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing, you know? And, it's been really like one of the best parts of my life to be on this show with you guys.
Yeah. Oh, I hate that we're on Zoom. I mean, I've hated that this show has been on Zoom for 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I got, especially in a moment like this, I just wish we could hug so bad. It doesn't feel right to have this be my last episode and that at the end of it, we're just going to sign off as Zoom. We can't give each other a hug because it just feels wrong.
I know. It's so weird. Well, that's another transition, right? The show's like when you think of all the transitions that we've gone through personally and professionally over the last 7 years, like we used to record every episode in a studio, you know, and then we went remotely. And I mean, the different relationship transitions we've all had and the different job transitions. I mean, it is like this weird living time capsule. And I think it used to make me very anxious that all of these like older versions of me were out there, like living in space, kind of, you know, for anybody to tune into. But I think there's something really interesting about that, because it can, like, so many of our episodes, like, they can meet people where they're at that point in time. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you might connect with 2 years ago, Delaney, Kelsey, or Taylor, or whatever. Yeah. And more so than present, or vice versa. And like all of that is okay, because that, I mean, I feel the same way too, where I might tune into a podcast for a long time and I resonate more with the newer episodes, or how that person evolved versus the older episodes, or how they used to be, or vice versa. And I think that's a really kind of powerful thing about letting all these versions of you live in a way. Because you can meet people where they're at and what they're going through in the moment.
I couldn't agree more. You know, I talk so much on the show about my favorite YouTube beauty gurus and how I followed them, and in the same way that I think a lot of our listeners have followed this show. And I will go back, you know, when I was going through more of the depression stuff recently, I was looking up YouTube videos of the girls who have talked openly about having depression. And those videos are like 3 years old, but what they were saying was exactly what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
As I'm like in a hotel room in DC, feeling like I don't know what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to get through this. And it was so helpful to have somebody talk about, like, this was my experience when I tried this antidepressant. This is how I was feeling before I got on it. You know, all it just, you never know. And I wish I could tell that person, you know, that YouTuber, like, thank you so much for what you put out there, because it really does change people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think, like, being a podcaster or podcasting or just any part of the process has taught you about yourself? Or like, what's the biggest takeaway for you doing this for 7 years, whatever comes to mind?
Man, I have changed so much in 7 years. I think probably the biggest lesson I've learned from doing this show is just to be kinder to myself, and to have a good relationship with myself. And I probably sound like a broken record on that, because I know I've said that many times in the past few years of the show, but I just can't. If you listened early on, you heard like the Netflix, you know, anxiety spiral of those sort of things. I used to have such a hard time with mistakes and imperfections, and I feel like this show and just growing up in general has taught me how to handle things with so much more humanity, both for myself and for other people, and just be like, you know, we're all doing our best. You hope that other people think that as well, that everybody's just like trying their best. You hope that people aren't super critical, but yeah, that has been the most valuable thing for me in the show. Is it's like the oxygen mask thing. If you don't take care of yourself, if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, it's going to be a lot harder to go through the world. Right. Having the best life you could. So that's probably a huge one. And the guests that we've had on the show, Jesus.
No, just absolute powerhouses.
Yeah, these people who I have felt so lucky that we've gotten to have the conversations with people we've had. And I mean, you're going to get to continue to have these guests on, and yeah, people who say things that you're like, oh, I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. Like, exactly. Oh, wow, you just said something that completely changed the way I will think about things forever. Yeah. And that's truly invaluable.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another, I feel like, interesting transitions you can see throughout the show too, is like, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, like the people that I admire, and like even that pattern has changed a lot, right? Where it's like, for a while it was like I wanted like every entrepreneur and CEO on the podcast or whatever, right? And now it's like, now I want, like now I have like activists on or whatever. It's like you can even see how our either personalities evolved, our values are like, you know what I mean? It's just, that's a whole nother thing. If you look at it as this body of work, you can really see that all of us were reflected in what was going on with the podcast, which is so interesting. And I think for me, like the fact that we have learned something new every week for 7 years, the fact that just learning and reflecting and questioning our beliefs and conditioning and all that has been a part of our weekly routine has absolutely changed my life in every way, shape, or form. I mean, I truly would not be who I am without this podcast and the people that we have been able to sit down and have conversations with and have had access to because of it. And I'm so grateful for that. Like, I really don't take for granted how like lucky we are and how special that is to get to do. And I mean, I think it's just made me this like insatiable learner and like lifetime learner, because I enjoy soaking up people's wisdom and life experience and all of that so much.
Yeah, that blows my mind to think about how much worse off I would be without this podcast the past 7 years. Like,
right.
There are so many things I wouldn't know.
Yeah. Yes.
It's it's nuts. And I also, even when there have been hard times and it's felt hard to like show up and feel that I could be helpful as a podcast host. Like, I mentioned earlier that there have been times this past year where I felt like I didn't really have anything to give because I felt like I just was so depleted or I was going through a really hard time. Right. And I have to say, no matter how hard of a time I was having, getting on the Zoom and just talking to you for an hour, like you're just such a magical human being, and I feel so lucky that you're one of my best friends and that I've gotten to work with you every week every week for 7 years. I'm gonna cry now. But
right back at you. I love you so much, and I'm so glad you get to stay in my life and that this is not the end of our relationship. And oh my God, it's so weird. Now, like, we'll be catching up on things and stuff, not on a podcast, on our phone calls or FaceTimes or whatever. But it is weird, like, the maybe kind of taking for granted, I don't know, like, I know I'm going to see Kelsey on Zoom, next week, or, like that just kind of standing appointment that we've had and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think about not just the things I've learned the past 7 years, but also the things that this podcast has like been a witness to, like all of these, like we podcasted through the pandemic. We were doing 2 episodes a week.
Oh God, I forgot about that. What were we thinking?
I don't know what we were thinking. We were on one. I mean, I was going
we were trying to beat the pandemic. That's what we were trying. This'll do it.
Oh my God. What a dark time for me. I was going through some darkness. And, the pandemic was like globally a time where people needed connection.
Yeah.
And we got to connect with each other. Yeah. We got to talk and try to make something helpful or interesting or funny. And I mean, this podcast has been so, like, I got engaged on this podcast.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I've gotten divorced while having this podcast.
Yeah.
I've, you know, moved to 2 different states during this podcast. I, you know, now I bought a house, I'm living with my, you know, my dream man on this podcast. Like, I mean, just like huge life event after huge life event. I told you guys that my mom had dementia on this podcast. Like, it's wild. And and the reality is, like, I say you guys as in you listeners, and yet it's so crazy because I'll never get to meet most of you, which I fucking hate. Like, that's why I'm always like, oh, please come out to a show, which is not just like that I, you know, would love for the shows to feel full and all of that good stuff. But getting to meet Helpsters in line is wonderful. I mean, it's like, it's such a nice experience to finally get to, every time that happens, be like, oh, and this is another person who listens. This is a face to a sea of ears, basically. Yeah. But yeah, it's just crazy.
Oh my gosh, I know. When you think of like all of the life things that we've recorded during either experiencing it or like getting proposed to on the podcast, literally it's happening at, you know, on air or whatever, or or just being like, I got married yesterday, you know, whatever. I'm just like, whatever. Right. I'm like, I've gotten married twice on this podcast to the same person, but one was an elopement, one was like a you know, bigger wedding. You know, Kelsey and Taylor were there. They roasted us. It was great. But it's like, you look at all of the moved 3 times, about to be a 4th coming up. Mm-hmm. I mean, my goodness.
It's so much.
It really is strange to think about all of that. And I got to say, one thing that I will never forget, which changed the course of my life, is I had a day job I did not like. This podcast was like such a joy for me when we started it. I knew I wanted to leave the entertainment industry and the way that I had been going about it. You know, I know I didn't want to be a performer. I was like, I had written some things like, do I want to be a writer, producer? I was just so all over the place. And I had this hobby I had been doing for a while as a joke and kind of as a fun side thing, Dicks by Delaney. And Kelsey was the person who said, why don't you just do Dicks by Delaney full time? You said that. And I'm like, that is truly the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. I would never be able to do this full time. Who's going to buy all this stuff enough for me to pay my bills? Yeah. And, but you were the first person that made me believe that I could do something I liked full time. And then I did it. Ooh. And then I launched that business and then it worked. And I was able to leave that job, and it really took me forward on this, you know, path to kind of entrepreneurship. I had built that business successfully. That turned into operating like my own consultancy and helping other people with their business and branding and all that kind of stuff. And then that led me to, you know, figuring out how to integrate everything. You know, how do I integrate my comedy side and my writing, but also in a job that I enjoy. I mean, it all just led to me believing that I could actually enjoy my work and, you know, have fun with it. So thank you for that. Because I truly wouldn't have done that without you. I really wouldn't, because, you know, I didn't have a lot of examples of people going after their dreams and enjoying what they do and not like giving up, like just being resilient with it. And so, oh God, I'm gonna cry again.
It's okay.
But no, like being around you and Taylor, like you definitely made me believe like, okay, like these people are doing it. My friends are doing it. So I could do it. Let me just take this next step, you know? And oh my God, I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for all of the people who, when they were tuning into the podcast, supported my businesses and my transitions and like, because they made it possible too.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. It's not going to take me 3 months, guys, to that is sinking in
real time.
Never mind. It was more like 30 minutes. If you guys were curious.
Yeah, I think in so many ways, like each of us have led by example for each other in the ways that we were afraid of. Yeah. Like you were such a huge inspiration for me financially. You set this bar of like, no, it's okay to make money. It's okay to value your work.
Right.
And to want to be paid well for it. Because to me that felt, I was like, oh God, like you get that imposter syndrome of like, who am I to think that I should price myself a certain way, whether it's in comedy, whether it's, you know, back when I was doing like the makeup courses and stuff like that. And you were such a badass. I feel like you really hit your stride and you helped me realize that it's not only like okay to price yourself well, you're doing yourself a huge disservice if you don't.
Right.
And I, you know, a few hours ago had my second meeting with a financial planner, and I'm like, and you also were hugely instrumental in encouraging me to do that. And I look at the 28-year-old on the podcast who was falling for pyramid schemes and just like kind of scraping by, like not able to even visualize a life for myself where I wouldn't be living paycheck to paycheck essentially. And I can't believe I'm recording this now from my house and having conversations with a financial planner about like what my retirement goals are, and like really just owning my life and going, okay, I'm an adult now. Sometimes I still feel like a kid, but sometimes I have these sort of moments where I'm like, oh shit, no, I really, like, nobody's going to come make you do these things. If you want to get things going, you have to do it for yourself. And this show, I think about having like Delianne, the money coach, on and stuff like that. They're just, there are like 100 different aspects of life that this show has totally changed my life with. Money, relationships, career, family. It's like, it's nuts.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, you know, it's so interesting. This podcast has really been the only constant in my life as far as like career or work stuff.
Right.
When you think about all the transitions that I've done, this is the thing that I have stuck with the longest. And I have been trying to figure out like, oh, what do I want to do? What do I love? What do I love the most? I'm like, obviously I really love this podcast because I didn't pivot. You know what I mean? Like and that it's, for me, it is really great to know, because there's been other things that I have transitioned out of, and I've, career wise. And that is a big lesson for me. It's like, no, you have figured out what you enjoy. Like, stop saying that you haven't, because it's worth it for me to keep showing up and like, navigate the ebbs and flows of it. And I think I think I've learned that I really I love this medium so much. I'm a huge podcast consumer in my free time, and listening to other people's podcasts has changed my life. It is my go-to resource for anything, really. When I want to learn about something, I go to podcasts. I don't really read books. Sometimes I listen to audiobooks, don't get me wrong. Yeah. But like, podcasts are so important in my life that the fact that we get to do one, or that we've been able to put ours out there is really cool. Like,
yeah,
I really enjoy what the fucking podcast. I didn't even know what a podcast was when we started our own. I had never listened to one. When we started Self-Helpless, I had never listened to a podcast, and I did not quite understand what it was.
Oh, that is not surprising to me at all. So funny. Yeah. And I have to say, especially in this past year, once we did the episode about my mom having dementia, getting that outpouring of love from you helpsters in your emails that you sent in, messages you sent me online, and emails I still get from you guys about it. I'll never be able to put into words how much that means to me, but I just hope you know that, God, I'm so grateful for our community we've built here, and that it's not just like me talking about my experiences or you talking about your experiences,
right.
That we get to have people reach out to us and share their experiences and help us feel less alone.
Yeah.
What a gift. I mean, yeah, I can't thank you enough if you're somebody who's reached out about that. So thank you.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah. Oh man.
Anything else that you want to share? Anything before we kind of like get into your final segment of the show?
Final segment. Just thank you guys. Thank you for being the best podcast listeners on the planet. I mean,
truly,
we've really had such a wonderful, supportive community, and I know that you guys will continue to be as Delaney continues to carry the torch and have kick-ass guests on and all of that. So just thank you. And again, if you wanna come check out Pretend Problems Podcast and see if that's a fun fit for you too, then come on over. I'll be there and I'll be on the road. My good shit segment is that I've been doing a lot of sort of like artist date sort of things lately.
Ooh.
You guys know I love the book The Artist's Way so much, and she really encourages people to like write a list of things, like 20 things that you love doing, and then try your hardest to go out of your way and do them, because a lot of the times the things that we love doing, we don't actually do very often,
right.
Because just life gets in the way. You're busy working, maybe you've got kids. It's just like the things that actually just bring you joy without any work attachments or attachments to other people don't often get done. So I went and saw the Beyonce movie by myself when I was on the road recently.
Oh, you did?
I went to the Beyonce movie in theaters by myself. I had the fucking best time. It was so good. Oh, it was so good. It was so good. So I did that. I played basketball on the road with Tommy recently.
Nice.
Chad and I went to a volleyball open gym here in Minnesota a couple days ago and played volleyball. I've really been trying to go out of my way to just find more balance in my life and do things that are not work related, just that bring me joy. And it's addicting. It's like as soon as I let myself start doing that stuff more, I'm like, oh my God, why don't I make more room for this more often? But that's kind of what I was mentioning at the beginning of this episode, that I'm just trying to really restructure my life and not in like I'll try it. It's like I've been doing some big restructuring.
Yeah.
And it's already, I feel like already really helping me shift my mindset and helping me make time for things that bring me joy. So that's been pretty great lately.
Oh, I'm so glad you're doing that. And
thank you.
Yeah, it wouldn't be your last episode without a Beyonce mention. So I'm glad we got that. glad we got that in. We squeezed that one in for sure.
Thank you. It feels right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, how about you?
You know, my segment this week is going to be a hybrid of the fuck and also a good shit. Obviously, Kelsey's leaving. That's the obvious, the fuck, right? And then my good shit is like, I genuinely am still as excited about the podcast as I was when I started. I fucking love it. And the guests that are coming up, I know you guys are going to really love. I'm so excited about it. Oh shit, my battery's about to die. Hold on, Kels, before I lose my computer. Oh my God. Of course. Of freaking course. That is hilarious. Should we keep this in? Oh my God.
If you want.
Now people are going to see I have no bra on. That's fucking on brand. Okay.
You know, it wouldn't be a final episode without me talking about Beyonce, and it wouldn't be a final episode of me on without me seeing your nips.
We did it.
We did it. You did it.
Kels. Okay.
Oh.
We did it.
We did it.
Everything's fine? Okay. Look, very excited about the guests coming up. We're going to have some recurring guests as well. Just a lot of things that we're going to be kind of, you know, looking at and updating. And yeah, I'm really excited about this next year. Kels, obviously come back anytime. We love you. We wish you the best. Glad that you're restructuring your life in a way that feels good and has more room for fun and just makes sense for what you want for your future. And
thank you.
I mean, what a fucking great time this has been.
Thank you.
7 years later.
I know. Well, you know, also when you come visit me, you'll have to be a guest on Pretend Problems.
Oh my God, I would love that. Would love that.
We would be honored.
Oh my God. Oh yeah. Oh my God. That would be so fun.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh my God. I know this is a little too soon, but does Pretend Problems want to be on the podcast? I'm already trying to book Kelsey as a guest. I am not letting her go very easily. What's your Tuesday looking like this Tuesday? Are you available? Anyway, look at TBD to see Kelsey and Chad as Pretend Problems on Self-Helpless sometime between now and 2027. Okay, we'll keep you posted.
We'll make it happen.
But yeah, I'd love to be on the show. Yeah. I can't wait to see you and give you some in-person hugs, both of you guys.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I know, how fun. How weird is it that this work together is wrapping up, but I'm going to get to work with you in a different way coming up, which hopefully I'll be able to share more about. So I'm excited for that.
And I'll be in LA the week that this episode comes out. I get to see you then.
You guys, this is a happy ending. Okay. This is happy stuff going on.
It's a happy
okay?
ending.
If I say
it's
happy
a happy
enough,
funeral.
I will believe it. Yeah. This is a living funeral. If you don't know, is when the person actually attends their funeral before they die. Okay.
Wow.
So this is kind of what we're doing here.
Yeah. This is my Self-Helpless funeral. Oh my God. Oh, that sounds too sad. I don't like that. It's not a funeral.
Yeah. Right.
It's goodbye for now.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Delaney said, I'm sure I will pop back on the way that Tay has popped back on. And we'll have Delaney on Pretend Problems. And I'm sure we'll have Taylor on Pretend Problems too whenever she visits. Hopefully we can get you guys both out here together soon. And it'll be great.
Oh. Mwah.
Mwah.
As Kelsey says, chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
Chef's kiss.
I love you, Helpsters. Thank you for an incredible almost 7 years of my life.
If I don't say anything, then we don't have to hang up. I'm not signing off. I refuse to wrap up this episode. No, I love you. I'm excited for you.
I love you too.
I love everybody, for tuning in. Thank you so much for all the support throughout the years, and stay tuned for what's next, because, I feel like Self-Helpless's new theme song should be like, it's still standing.
It's still Delaney.
You can't kill it. It is a cockroach. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
guys.
Talk to you soon.
All right. I love you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Maybe I'm self-helpless.
Thank you for tuning in to the Self-Helpless Podcast. You can find our Patreon community, merch, and our individual work at selfhelplesspodcast.com.
We'd be thrilled if you shared this episode with a friend, left an iTunes review, or feel free to post it on your Instagram and tag @SelfHelplessPodcast. Thanks, guys.